This is the Alcatel One X, but that doesn't really matter. More importantly, this is Android Oreo Go Edition. And the name sort of says it all, but I just want to be really clear. This is not a completely separate version of Android. It's good old Android Oreo configured to run better on devices with between 512 megs and 1 gig of RAM. That's obviously not a lot, but bear in mind that the Android Go devices we've seen so far cost around $100 or less. These aren't flagship devices so much as they are first phones or devices for people in developing markets. It's a way of making sure everyone gets access to a solid Android experience no matter what your budget is. Google has done quite a bit of work to make sure Android Go runs well on cheap phones, from reducing the amount of space Android itself takes up to amping up how aggressive Android is when it comes to memory management. For the most part though, Android Go works just like you'd expect Android to on a low-end device, which is to say, not super great. Multitasking in particular is difficult with the limited amount of RAM these phones have, but I've never not been able to do what I needed to. It just took a little longer in some cases. And I should also point out that smartphone makers can skin Android Go editions like they could with full-on Android too. Alcatel here has made some mild tweaks to the device's interface, but we know Samsung for sure is planning to bring the interface from its more powerful smartphones to its first Go device. I have to imagine a stock Android experience wouldn't tax hardware of this caliber as much, but hey, it is what it is. The most obvious changes are the Google apps preloaded onto Go devices. They're typically lighter weight versions of existing Google software, and they've been a mixed bag so far. Just look at Gmail Go. In my experience, it's basically identical to the version most Android phones already use. Files Go, meanwhile, is an excellent file manager that lets you send files to other devices without relying on internet access, and even offers ways to help you free up space on your device. Some other preloaded Go apps are a bit more limited. Google Maps Go actually isn't a standard Android app at all. It's a progressive web app, so it runs entirely in browser. Sure, you can look up points of interest and get directions from here to there, but scrolling around the map is often really sluggish, and the web app doesn't support turn-by-turn navigation. There's also no way to save local area maps to the phone itself over Wi-Fi, which seems like it would be a great idea for users in countries where data connections are spotty and costly. Google Assistant is here too, and it often works surprisingly well. It rarely goofed when I asked for something because all of the real software heavy lifting happens on Google's end. There's no wake word support, so you'll have to long press the home button, which is fair enough. The thing is, it lacks a lot of the functionality you might be used to. There's no keyboard, no ways to set reminders, or access assistant-powered services built by other companies. It's perfectly adequate for, setting alarms and finding nearby restaurants, and for that matter, controlling your media. Cramming Google Assistant into phones like this was clearly all about compromise. But the basics are here, and Google has said it'll make more features available over time. Getting more Android Go friendly apps could be a little easier though. The Play Store works the same as it always did, but with a few helpful changes. It'll highlight Android Go and light versions of existing apps, and if you look at an app that has a corresponding light version, the Play Store will tell you about it in that app listing. Nice. You'll also see file sizes on every app card in the store. It's meant to help users stay conscious of how each download will affect their limited storage, but the numbers we're actually seeing here aren't all that telling. Just for kicks, I downloaded Google Pay. The Play Store listing said it was 12 megabytes, but the download meter said the package was 7 megabytes. And once the app was installed, it took up more than twice what the Play Store was telling me. A little more clarity around those file sizes would really be helpful, considering the limits these Android Go devices have to work with. And to be clear, you can download just about any Android app onto an Android Go device. The experience really varies though. Some apps work just fine. Others were barely usable. Right now, there's no way to tell which apps run and which apps run like garbage, so actually finding valuable software to install is kind of a total crapshoot. Out of curiosity, I picked up a Moto E5 Play, and depending on where you buy it in the US, it's as much as $20 more than this Alcatel, and it runs standard Android Oreo much better. There is nothing about that experience I would not prefer. Here's the thing though, it's still early days for Android Go, and Google is committed to it. Every future version of Android will get a Go edition. And as lower-end devices continue to get more powerful hardware and Google figures out more ways to improve performance and add functionality, Android Go is going to get better over time. It'll never make a $100 phone feel like a flagship, but even in its current state, Android Go is another step in a very valuable direction.